Ahoy everyone, Tightrope here, and in this video we're taking a look at the gameplay changes and general balance changes that were made in the 2.1 patch for COH3, and boy, there were some big ones. The breach mechanic has been overhauled in this patch. Here's a demonstration from pre-patch. As you can see, it takes about 11 seconds for the breach to complete. Now here we are in patch 2.1, going to do a basic breach. First thing to note is that breach costs 25 munitions for everything now. Like some squads pre-patch used to have munitions costs, other like assault greens used to be able to breach for free, but now always costs 25 munitions. I'm going to put the breach on the building. As you can see, they kind of sprint to the building now. So you're just waltzing up to it, so that speeds things up a bit. And just in general, that is much faster now. To accomplish this, it seems they have sped up the animation a bit and removed the section where the first two models storm in the door. Relic have also changed the way breach does damage. It used to always kill 2 to 3 models. Now there's a 25% chance to kill a model, each individual model. And any that do survive the breach will take between 40 and 60 damage. So I managed to kill 4 models that time around. I got pretty damn lucky. You can see the remaining health here. Some took close to 60, others closer to 40. One thing that I noticed though is that after doing a breach, I didn't gain any veterancy, which I think is a little bit strange. So maybe there's still something for Relic to improve about breach, giving vet to the squad. Previously, you were able to cancel breach if you did early enough. But once the guys started to move to kick in the door, that's when you could no longer cancel it. Now if we breach, now you should be able to cancel it any time before it does damage. And then it'll go on a 10-second cooldown. Checking my munitions, I'm at 2450. Breaching, gotta cancel at the last second. So it doesn't cost you any munitions if you cancel it last second, just goes on 10-second cooldown. There used to be a problem with breach, that if the enemy squad jumped out after about 2 seconds of breach being underway, the squad would continue the breaching animation, meaning they would take ages to get inside the building. But now if I jump out mid-breach, the squad will instantly teleport inside the building. So yeah, that's really just way better. All these changes combined make breach significantly better than it used to be, and actually like a threat on garrison heavy maps rather than just a joke. You know, you won't be standing outside for ages taking heaps of damage while you're trying to do the breach. Breach, I think, after these changes is legit and probably going to be a better option than throwing a grenade if you've got both, against garrisons. Relic say they've sped up towing. Here we are pre-patch with the most basic style of hitch up, and it took 3.1 seconds. Now let's give that a go in the new patch 2.1. Yeah, okay. If I had to guess, maybe like half a second faster, maybe even a tiny bit more than that actually. Here is another scenario where both the weapon and the vehicle are facing 180 degrees the wrong direction. Pre-patch, this took about 6.5 seconds to complete. And now here we are post-patch, going to try the same thing. So yeah, it's a bit faster. I think the main difference is, and they state this in the notes, that the gun doesn't wait until the vehicle is rotated before it starts to rotate. Once you give the order, it tears down and then it starts rotating as soon as it's torn down. So that just shaves a couple seconds off. Also, I think just generally like loading into the vehicle now is faster. The crew don't just like muck around standing outside. They just like zoom, shoot into the vehicle very quickly once it's finished tearing down. Another change related to towing, I believe when you're maybe about this far away from the weapon and you give a right click command to try hitch up the weapon and you're facing this direction, the right direction to go for a hitch up if you just reversed in there. Instead of just reversing there, would turn around, drive there head on, get there, then turn back around and go for the hitch up. And those 2 extra turns would really slow things down. So if you ever wanted to drive your vehicle, a little bit away from the team weapon, maybe worried about getting hit by like a walking stuka or something, every time you'd have to manually reverse up there, manually hitch up from there, and that was just so slow. so many extra commands, you couldn't just set it and forget it. But now here I am, about 55 range away, facing the right direction. And it's going to back up there straight away, go for the hitch up. So it's going to make it way easier to just hitch up from further away. But 60 range seems to be the turning point. Once you're further than 60 range away, go for a right click. It'll turn there, drive head on, then turn back around. Kind of the old-fashioned way. But either way, this is a really nice change. Makes it way easier to use towing. Both these changes, faster, easy to use. I think that's going to empower towed weapons by quite a lot. When it comes to weapon towing, say the enemy is in this direction off to the right, the optimum way to do it is to reverse towards the enemy, so the gun is facing that direction. Then, whenever you get to the right spot, you hit stop, and then unload. That way the weapon doesn't have, if you're driving head on, the weapon would have to rotate. This way the weapon's already facing the right direction towards the enemy. You can quickly set up and fire on the enemy. So yeah, reversing towards the enemy, hitting stop, and then unloading, I think is the optimum way to do it. The problem was pre-patch, what used to happen is when you give a reverse command and then hit stop, sometimes the weapon would kind of spin off to the sides after you gave the stop command. So then if you tried to unload, then the weapon would be facing the wrong direction, would have to rotate, and it would just slow everything down. But now after the patch, it seems like they've fixed this. Hitting stop after doing a reverse command doesn't seem to cause the weapon to spray off to the sides. So yeah, it's much easier now to use reverse and to stop and to unload as your preferred towing method to more rapidly shoot at the enemy. So that's really nice. One thing though that is still a problem I think with towing is the drop heavy weapon button. So say players don't know about the reverse and to stop and to unload method. Say they just want to use drop heavy weapon. They click here. You would maybe expect it to reverse there and drop it off, but instead it's going to turn around, drive their head on, and then drop it. So I think maybe this would make sense if drop heavy weapon followed similar intelligence, such that, within 60 range, if you use drop heavy weapon behind you, it will reverse there and drop it off rather than doing the spin into spin. One other problem with these heavy weapons that desperately needs to be addressed is that they don't have an attack command in their command bar. So I suppose technically this is called attack move on every unit, and because they can't move by themselves, they just don't have a command here whatsoever. And the problem with that is that say there's a decrewed anti-tank gun or something that you want to kill with your towed weapon, now you have to rely on attack round, and then your chances of hitting this are way worse, especially if there's a bit of elevation in the mix, compared to just directly targeting with attack move. I think decrewed team weapons have a target size of 20, so you've got a decent chance of hitting them with attack command, better than with attack round for sure. And this plagues, the 88, this plagues the emplacements. There needs to be like an attack without move command option here, so you can kill off stuff like this more easily. Here is a big change to Company of Heroes gameplay. Previously, when you held a territory point like this, you would have a 6.5 radius circle of vision around that point, so you could see when enemies were coming into it. And obviously once it went neutral, you would lose that vision. But now, as you can see, there is no longer any vision around the capture flag. So say if an enemy runs in there to do a capture, I have no idea. I've got no idea what's over there capping at all. Get no scouting intel from that whatsoever. I will say that like previously, I would have strats where if I was trying to do some sneaky capping, I would like stand right on the very edge of the point while I was capping, and that way the enemy couldn't see me. But actually in COH3 that was quite hard to do because the radius of vision was so big and the capture circle is quite small. So oftentimes you'd barely have any room on the edge to do a capture like this. But yeah, now that option's just completely gone. You're going to get no intel from this whatsoever. Unless you've got one of those special abilities like Panzerjäger Command. It's got that ability, or maybe Kettenkrad communication cables. They've also received some changes. but they will still be providing some vision around capture flags. So like I said, they wanted to, increase the strength of scouting abilities like those two that I just mentioned, and just, this is just a big change to how code works. Staying on the topic of capturing, and Relic have made some really nice changes to squad capture behavior. So previously, if I gave a right-click capture command in a situation like this, the squad would actually kind of run past the capture flag a bit, maybe towards the enemy side, and they kind of be in this kind of formation, slightly on the other side of the point. But now, if I give a right-click capture command on this side, the squad kind of gets into the circle until I think every model is in the circle, and then they stop. So they stay on this side. Maybe it's better for you if you're trying to play defensively, more towards your troops on this side rather than on the enemy side. So yeah, that's good. Another change they've made, if your entire squad is inside the circle, say, I want to get in this cover position here. My entire squad's in the circle, but it's in cover. Previously, if I gave a right-click command to capture, the squad would run out of the cover, try stand around the middle of the flag. But now, as you can see, my squad is still nicely behind cover after giving this capture order. So this is really nice because it means I can go shift, capture, and then capture the next point. So it makes queuing up capture commands, but while staying in heavy cover, much, much better. So building sandbags and stuff in cover is going to be way stronger after this because queued up capture commands, shift. So you right-click into cover, shift, right-click the point, and then right-click the next point. You'll stay in cover the whole time you're capturing, and then you'll run to the next point. So sandbags and stuff in cover are going to be way stronger. On top of that, what this means you can do is kind of similar to the old Code 2 trick. Say you're coming from this side, maybe it's even at the start of the game. You can right-click here, hit shift, queue up the capture command, and then say you want to capture over here next. Keep holding on to shift, and then right-click the point. So you'll run to the far edge of the capture circle. Your squad will stop there. They'll capture. Once you've captured it, they'll run from that side over to there. So instead of being over here and then taking maybe like 5 seconds to run over to the far side and then keep running to the next point, now they're already standing there right on the edge, ready to race to the next point. So yeah, I cannot overstate, it seems like a pretty minor change, but this is a big deal for, just being able to queue up commands with shift and cover inside capture points is going to be way stronger after this change. Artillery emplacements have received a change in this patch. Things like the M2A1 and the Obiche. Now they will be taking less damage when they're being shot at by things like the Bishop, Vesper, Walking Stuka, Calliope. Those like medium and heavy artillery, on-map artillery, will only be doing 50% damage to them instead of 75% damage to them. So yeah, especially the Obiche, which has quite a big hitbox and is quite easy to hit, would die to these quite easily. Now that's not going to be the case anymore. And on the other side of that change, you can see now the Bishop only has 160 health, Vesper down to 160 instead of 240, and the Walking Stuka down to 120 instead of 160, which can obviously be boosted up with the armory upgrades. So these are going to be easier to kill, say, if you want to hit them with the Howitzer. So we're going to do a test. Howitzer shooting at the Vesper. I think it will be able to one-shot it. And then back the other way, Bishop barraging the Obiche. See how much damage it's going to take in one barrage. So didn't quite get a direct hit there. But second shot got through. I think it can technically one-shot, but you can get lucky enough. It's obviously super close range. Every shot's landing. So yeah, there we go. One barrage from Bishop. Not enough to knock out the Obiche. Lighter artillery, things like mortar and pack howitzers, I think already were only doing half damage against emplacements, so that's kind of unchanged. And off-map artillery, things like naval bombardment, no damage change against emplacements, so they will still bust through them with ease. One of the big problems with the health reduction on the Bishop specifically is its Vet 1 ability, Direct Fire. It requires you to be quite close to the enemy to be able to use it, and the closer the better, because this always seems to collide with the ground when there's some elevation involved. So the closer the better for direct fire. And now this dies in just one shot from an anti-tank gun or like one Panther shot. How are you ever going to get close enough to use direct fire safely? You know, opportunities you had before, probably going to have like a third as many to use direct fire after this change. So yeah, the health reduction on the Bishop is really sad for its Vet 1 ability. The Orbice, BL 5.5 and Canoni have all come down in command point cost by 1, so you'll be able to get them out a bit earlier, continuing to buff up these static howitzers. In terms of my strategies, the Orbice coming 1 command point earlier, it's going to be really nice for my Orbice rush. The BL 5.5 haven't had much success. Like generally, I think it's too vulnerable to rush it in ones, but you know, come on a bit earlier after coming down the other side of the tree first. And then for the Canoni, the strategy where you rush this out and then upgrade the truck that comes with it to your med truck. Now that coming in 1 command point earlier is going to be really nice as well. So watch out for the Canoni rush. I saw Hulk Smash do it as well. Relic have made a change to how mortars work, specifically how long it takes before a shell will land. So I think previously if you did a close range shell, it would land faster. Long range shell, it would take longer to travel. It would take longer to land on the enemy. So I think that makes sense. But what they've done now is they've standardized it at all ranges. So it should be 2.5 seconds from launch to land. So we're going to try that out here against the flak at pretty much max range. See how long it takes before a shell will land. See what the shell's projectile... Wow, it's like a fast forward. That's a little bit of immersion breaking, yeah? Okay, I mean, that just looks like they've made it go on fast forward. Now, I did have some archive footage of the same demonstration, and in that previous test, from seeing smoke come out of the mortar, the shell launching, till it doing damage to the flak, took 4.5 seconds. So now it's going to be so much faster for a mortar shell to land at max range. Now, I did think that mortars were weak in the previous patch, and part of the reason for that was that, at least in high rank games, you'd hear when the mortar starts to fire, you'd have a very good idea of what it was targeting. You start to dodge with that, and then maybe you'd only be getting hit with like one shell before you vacated the area. So we're going to put that to the test here. See how quickly I can dodge away. I'm going to, not be crazy on my reaction times here.
This thing is heavy, Clear out! Go! Relocating MG while we can.
So yeah, that was like maybe a little bit on the fast side, but this time around you get hit with 2 shells instead of just 1. So yeah, this ultra fast mortar projectile speed combined up with the same shell travel time, whether it's close range or long range, not a big fan of it. I can see what they're trying to do here, but I think it's a little bit like immersion breaking. Kind of removes like some of the fun of the game as well. Like, oh, I can bring it in closer here or land faster and it'll be better, My opponent will have less time to dodge and it'll be more effective. You can try and like min-max stuff like that. But a lot of projectiles, it's the same story with like Howitzer and stuff. They've kind of got these like minimum arcs they have to do. So you can't go for those shotgun blasts like you could back in COH3. And those were quite fun, risky, fun. No longer part of the game. So maybe instead they could have made the shells like not travel quite so high. Maybe that could have reduced the shell travel time because they zoom up crazy high. Maybe they could have made them not go quite as high. Kept the change. I think ultimately one change I would like to see is finally that I don't know if it's possible in the engine, but the weapons. The weapon part of team weapons are still absorbing 1 portion of the damage cap of mortars. So that's why mortars like howitzers and stuff have been a little bit ineffective against team weapons, because this bad boy is usually soaking up the biggest portion of damage. Like 1/4 of the damage gets split onto this and it gets absorbed. It takes no health damage. And yeah, can they fix that? I don't know. This is a good time to mention one trick or one problem related to mortars. I'm going to give this an attack move command. So when it gets in range of my machine gun over here,
Engage on sight.
we'll start to attack it. And there's something over here providing vision of my machine gun. And look at this. See, as soon as the shell gets launched, the mortar is revealed in the fog of war. Not when it does damage, as soon as the shell gets launched. This time around, the mortar is in attack ground mode rather than right click to attack. And you can see when it's in attack ground mode, it gets revealed upon damage rather than upon action. This time around, the mortar is in barrage mode. And you can see also in barrage mode, it doesn't reveal itself until it does damage. So attack ground and barrage are good. Attack, right click attack is not. So it's a micro trick for you guys. And this was a problem in COH3 as well. The heavy mortar has received a similar change, except it takes a little bit longer to land. It takes 3.25 seconds instead of 2.5.
Ready. Engaging new target.
Let's try that out. Noticeably slower for sure. The pack howitzer and the LAIG are a bit different. They didn't get a standardized shell travel time. Instead, they got an increase in speed of their projectiles. So let's see how that looks here.
Nice and silent.
You see they cruising super low on the ground, but just the shell is traveling much faster now. Unfortunately for these weapons, I didn't have a max range comparison. I looked through my archive footage, I only had a 65 range comparison. So here's the before footage. The heavy mortar took about 3.66 seconds, and the pack Howi took about 3.25. So at this range, there wasn't much of a buff to the heavy mortar, but that was a massive buff to the pack howitzer. You're not going to be able to dodge these shells at all at close range. They're coming in crazy fast now. One unusual thing about mortars in COH3 is that due to their AoE profile, the most damage they ever do to a squad member is 30 damage per hit. But against something like a Stummel, they can do a full 100 damage per hit. So, with these new shells traveling so fast, they're going to be absolutely clobbering light vehicles on the regular. So watch out for that. These are going to be a major problem for your light vehicles now. Relic have altered the way certain non-lethal abilities work, mainly smoke abilities, such that previously, if you were shooting and then you activated smoke immediately after you shot around, you have to wait for the mortar, for instance, to reload before the smoke would fire, and this would delay the smoke coming out, and Relic want to speed up smoke, make it feel more responsive. So Relic have decoupled smoke from their normal attacks, so that smoke won't have to wait for a reload before it's able to fire. I really want to make it feel more responsive. So I did some before and after testing of this. So we'll just see if we can feel the difference here. I can go for attack round. Smoke. Okay, right. Didn't feel that much faster. Attack round.
Attacking enemy infantry.
Okay. Centaur. Okay, that one definitely feels faster. Chaffee. Alright. They've made a bunch of tweaks here so that you can't do cheesy stuff to get two raw attacks out fast or anything like that. So yeah, as I said, they've decoupled the reload of normal attacks with smokes. But the way this shouldn't work is that I shouldn't be able to double tap now with say a Pershing attack into HVAP. Yep. Still a long reload before the HVAP comes out, so that's good. Relic have dramatically altered the way that friendly fire damage works in Company of Heroes 3. So here we are in the mod tools looking at the numbers, and previously there was only this stat here called damage friendly. So whenever your shells would land on your units or your teammates' units, you would use these damage multipliers depending on how close they are. The center of the AoE blast, multiply this by the normal damage. This is how much damage each model or whatever would take. So this was the friendly fire damage previously, but now there's a whole new stat down the bottom here called damage own units. So your teammates will still get hit with the damage friendly numbers, but your own units on certain things, mortars, artillery, off maps, and grenades, not like tank shells, other stuff, but yeah, those 4 will all use damage own units, and damage own units is the same as full damage. So you won't be able to do that cheesy stuff where previously it was a very common strat, at least in high rank games, where say like a close quarter squad was closing the distance on your own unit, you would throw a grenade right on top of your own squad because you only take like 10% damage, and they'd be right on top of you. They'd take like 80% and they'd have to retreat. It's just like stupid. I hated it and I pushed for more friendly fire damage, so I'm happy to see this. How it works for other things like tank shells is damage own units is exactly the same as damage friendly. So that's something to look at there. We'll notice here specifically for the mortar that damage friendly is actually higher than damage own units. So you can actually do more damage to your teammates' units than you can to your own, which is a little bit strange. And that is the problem with the old friendly fire system. You know, I think they wanted to add more fine-tuning possibilities compared to Code 2, but this is how we ended up with maybe like the old Panther doing more damage to your own units than to the enemies. And it looks like it's going to be the same case here. So I think they're going to need to do some fine-tuning on some of the numbers. But yeah, I'm happy to see this because I really hated the fact that you could just run through all your own stuff and take like no damage. Very like immersion breaking. Now, watch out for your own shells as well as the ones from the enemy. Relic have made some changes to basic grenades. They said they don't think they were powerful enough beforehand, so they've pretty much improved the AoE across the board. So we're going to look at the changes here. This affects, as I said, basic grenades, not the elite grenades, not gammon bombs, bundle nades. So we're starting out with the Tommy rifle nade here. And I had the numbers for the Tommy rifle nade and the Pathfinder rifle nade being exactly the same pre-patch. Relic had some different numbers. I don't know where they were getting theirs from. But yeah, now post-patch, the Tommy rifle nade and the Pathfinder rifle nade are exactly the same, and they follow this very unusual pattern. 120 damage out to 2 radius, then an immediate drop-off, then a little 20 damage for the rest of the radius. So an unusual AoE profile on them here, and this is kind of what they'll be doing to a lot of models due to the damage all whole principle if you're shooting this grenade at a building. So it's going to be very weak against buildings, but very strong, high kill radius. This is, 120 damage, enough to kill most models of main lines and stuff like that. So rifle nade is going to be potent against clumped up squads out in the open, but quite weak against buildings, and yeah, relatively small radius overall. Now going down to the stick grenade, I think Falchimier have this and Grenadiers. As you can see, you get a nice improvement. The 2.1 is in green. Bump up closer to the center. Nice buff there. There's a slight drop off in this area here. But then again, at the fire damage, it's a little bit better than it used to be. So we're doing more damage against garrisons than it used to, and more damage close to the center. There's just a little bit of a dip between 1.5 range and about 2.5 range. But yeah, not that noticeable. So an improvement there. Now we're looking at the rifleman grenade. I think this is also shared by paratroopers, though paratroopers have got a shorter fuse on their grenade. As you can see, they get a nice bump at most of the range, especially close to the middle. Again, similar to grenadiers, they lose a bit towards the outer edge, but they have the exact same value as beforehand at the far value. So what they'll be doing against buildings exactly the same as previously. And here they all are on one big graph, before and after. I think maybe, comparing the stick in green to the 2.1 rifleman grenade, stick grenade is still quite a lot weaker than the rifleman grenade, as you can see. So yeah, those are the winners and losers from the grenade changes. I didn't notice any change in the patch notes about the auto, that Bacillieri have. Don't know if those have received any changes. Maybe Relic can clarify. Relic have also updated the reticule on a bunch of grenades, so that now that the image that shows when you activate them more accurately represents their blast radius. They've also changed the stun grenade. Now any unit that's caught in the stun grenade's radius is going to take 40 damage. No damage drop off on that, even though every model gets stunned. Just the models that get hit by the grenade taking the 40 damage. And it's a similar story with Phosphorus. Now takes 30 damage anywhere in the radius. I think what they've done here is tried to match the radius on the Phosphorus explosion to be the same. The Phosphorus damage over time cloud.
Red phosphorus.
So they take damage on explosion. Well, that could all did it. Throw it right on top of this model, right in the middle. Okay, so that wasn't what I was expecting on the red phosphorus. Not sure what they did there. Relic have changed the way that upgraded bunkers and fighting positions work. Now you can actually garrison them with units. See how I'm jumping inside. Now I've got my coastals inside of my anti-tank bunker. You can see them in there and they'll be able to shoot out of that as well. So it offers a lot more utility to upgraded bunkers. You know, maybe your opponent's doing a base dive on you. You've built a bed bunker in your base as Wehrmacht. Now you might be able to like jump your low health squad into the bunker, offer them some protection. Obviously your squads do get a fortified position combat bonus when they're inside bunkers as well. Pretty hefty bonus, so expect to see a lot more of this going forwards. There were a few like oddities, I think, I noticed from this. First off, here's a machine gun bunker. But you can see it's only displaying the machine gun that I put inside the machine gun bunker, not the machine gun bunker itself. I feel like that maybe could be a little bit confusing to the enemy. Also, if you select, do a right-click drag, it doesn't work. You have to select, then tab, then right-click drag if you want to change the position of the machine gun in the machine gun bunker. But I could imagine it being very, very difficult to assault this position, almost impossible with infantry. Machine gun inside a machine gun bunker. Good luck. Now, I was curious about the command bunker because as we can see when we zoom in, like these slots are actually closed and they've got flags covering them as well. So will they be able to fire out of these slots or what the story is? So what I'm going to do here, you can see that this one's currently got occlusion. So you can see, but that's because I swapped players. Can't see these guys inside. When you're the friendly player, you know occlusion for units inside these bunkers doesn't seem to function, but if you swap to the enemy side, take over the enemy, they can see this. So it functions a little bit weird. They can see this guy in the mid bunker, but doesn't show the machine gun in the machine gun bunker immediately. A little bit unusual on the functioning. Anyway, we're going to run around. Command bunker. Looks like they've got 3 firing positions out there outside the slot that doesn't open. So, okay. So the DAC bunker that you build with defensive operations, you cannot get inside of that one. And same story with the Brit bunker, you cannot get inside that one either. Because, you know, they're not like upgraded. They don't start as a fighting position, then upgrade to a machine gun bunker or something like that. But the US Forces ones, you can. Here's the mortar pit. You can jump inside of that. Similar story here with the machine gun position, though, again, because this is kind of covered by this tarp, I guess you call it. I don't know. Yeah, the guys in there just cannot see out at all. So I'm wondering if they're going to be able to fire it over the other sides. And yeah, it does look like they can. In this patch, there is a really nice change to minesweeper units. Now they will gain experience when they sweep a mine. And in the preview, Relic said it was roughly 5 times the cost of the mine. So a normal mine costs 30 munitions. So you get 150 experience for sweeping it up, which is, you know, about a quarter of the way to Vet 1. Whereas more expensive mines like the Rego, I think they're 50. They'll give you more experience. S mines cheaper. That'll give you less experience. But yeah, I think this is a really good idea because it can be pretty hard to vet up engineers when they've been upgraded with the sweeper. You miss out on that like, flamethrower upgrade usually, so it's harder for them to gain vet through combat. But now they can get it through sweeping, which is really nice. And they kind of fell behind a little bit because, you know, quite a lot of early capping units like scouts and stuff getting experience from capping, but engineers weren't, and they're also falling behind because of that. Slight change to stealth structures, things like the Luftwaffe relay point and the various beacons. I've got them detected now, but if I move away from this, such that they're in the fog of war, they get hidden again. So as soon as they vanish into the fog of war, they're hidden. Obviously, after they haven't been detected for a while, they'll disappear anyway. But yeah, just means that if your opponent detects them or something, runs past them, doesn't notice it immediately, they won't be persistent in the fog, so they'll have to try and detect them again. They might forget where they are, or they may not have noticed it in the first place. So even better for you. So just makes these beacons and stuff harder for the enemy to deal with. There are a number of changes to unit camouflage in this patch. First off, detection range for bog stand units has been reduced. So you used to have 12.5 detection range, now it's down to 10. So that's the gap there that camouflage units can be in before getting detected. So 2.5 range shorter, maybe about this much range shorter. So, you know, that's just generally like a buff to camouflage units, especially those units that need to sneak into close quarters to be effective, like commandos, maybe not as important for snipers. They're now going to be able to sneak around more easily because box stand units aren't going to detect them as often. They didn't change detector units. You can see this one, Scout Squad's called Detector. These still have 25 detection range. So that's all the way there. So this kind of reinforces the need for detector units in your army. Makes them an important way to counter stealth units. There's one problem with the detector tag though, is that pioneers are detectors, as you can see, because they're detecting them from way out. But it doesn't say detector down here because they're already loaded up with a bunch of other tags. So maybe they need to, like, I think detector is more important as a role to be communicated, which isn't communicated through the UI anywhere, than what they do, like repair and defense builder. Maybe they could be merged into one and put detector in here because it's hard for new players to get familiar with these mechanics otherwise. For what they called in the patch notes elite camouflage, things like the sniper or the commander's camouflage, upon entering cover, it's basically as soon as they're in cover, the camouflage appears. Whereas previously there was like a half-second delay before they'd be camouflaged. I'm not super on board with this change because it was very frustrating when the camouflage units would reveal itself. You'd try to right-click to target it, and before units could like swing around and shoot at it, it had gone back into camouflage. It's going to happen even more often after that change. We'll have to live with it. You will notice one more thing is that if I exit cover, there's like a timer now that shows how long before I get revealed from camouflage. I think that is a really cool change. Going to make it much more easy for players to learn how far they can go before they get revealed when moving around the map. Encourage a lot more confidence with their stealth units. I really like that change. Also, if you hover over concealment on your unit, this shows roughly how far away an enemy unit can be, like a standard enemy unit, not a detector enemy unit, can be before you'll get revealed. So again, if you're ever unsure, like, oh, can I sneak around here? Your opponent's maybe got some unit just standing there idle or sitting behind cover. Now you can hover over this, say, okay, I will be far enough away, and continue along your sneak. So that is really nice quality of life change as well. So some big changes. Those two little UI changes I'm a big fan of. Do be aware though, with a squad like commandos, it's based around the middle of the squad, and you can be detected off the edge of the squad. So you might have to give yourself an extra like 4 or so range compared to the UI indication for something like this, because yeah, it's based around the center of the squad, and because the squad can be fanned out, spread out, and it's not going to be a perfect representation. So really good for snipers, not as useful for big squads like commandos. Last thing on camouflage, for Axis AT guns such as the Vet 1 or the Pack 40, LG40 has this by stock, and I would guess for Battlefield Espionage for DAC as well. They made a change here such that you can get the first strike bonus immediately after activating ambush camouflage. You don't have to like wait, stay in camouflage for a certain amount of time before getting the bonus. So I'm going to test that out here. Right clicking the Sherman and I'm going to put ambush camouflage on just before I'm about to fire. And there we go. It did 200 damage there instead of the usual 160. So, I mean, that's pretty powerful. I can definitely imagine like high-ranked players being able to abuse this, like trying to micro these AT guns, being able to get that first strike bonus quite frequently now after this change. Snipers for both US forces and Wehrmacht have had their build time reduced by 10 seconds, going from 40 down to 30 seconds. So at 30 seconds, it's still longer than most other units you can build at this timing, but not by quite so much. So, you know, if you're going for an early sniper, it's not going to slow down as much. Or if you're trying to build a sniper to react, say your enemy's got a building, a unit inside a building, and you want to build a sniper to counter it, rather than a flamethrower or a mortar, it's not going to take quite so long. So it's going to help you, you know, just react to what your opponent's doing faster. Signal detection that you might get on the DAC Recon Tractor or the upgraded 4x4 like we're using here has been changed. There were a lot of complaints about this in the past. So now you have to toggle to turn it on.
Best not keep him waiting.
Yeah, it sends out the pulse. And you will notice that the icons are slightly changed. Now they're like red instead of just yellow, maybe better denoting that they are the enemy. And if you toggle it off, it'll be another 5 seconds before you can turn it back on again. So you may be wondering, why would I want to turn it off?
Shouldn't be a problem.
Well, if we swap over to the enemy's point of view with signal detection turned on, you see that periodically the signal detecting unit will reveal itself in the fog 4, so the enemy knows that they're being detected and knows exactly where the detection vehicle is and where to go to kill it. So you're going to have to be quite careful with these signal detecting vehicles after this change, because yeah, the enemy's going to know where they are and they're going to want to kill them. So remember, they did buff up the range on a lot of these signal detecting vehicles, such that they go to about 125 range, which is about here. So, you know, they can still detect quite far away. Could be safe. Vehicle wrecks. Basically, the change here is that you need the tier up vehicle now to be able to crush a vehicle wreck. So ultralights won't be able to crush anything. Previously, they'll be able to crush other ultralight wrecks. No longer possible. You need like a proper, full-sized light vehicle to be able to crush them. Light vehicles can't be crushed by other light vehicles. Though Chaffee does have medium crush, so it can crush them. So some exceptions here and there. But yeah, you need like the next tier up to crush that vehicle. Mediums can't crush other medium wrecks. You need a heavy tank to crush them. And heavy tanks cannot crush other heavy tank wrecks. So these are immovable forces. Like I said, they kind of wanted to promote, you know, these being more persistent, available for more cover, more frequently in the late game, harder to get rid of wrecks, which, you know, I'm a big fan of. I'm a big recovery vehicle enjoyer, so wrecks being more persistent is really good for me, because it's very easy to accidentally like crush a wreck that you hope to salvage just in the heat of battle, or accidentally coming out of your base or something like that. So yeah, good for recovery vehicles. Also, if there's like a blob of tanks rolling forwards, the first one at the front gets destroyed. Now all the rest of them have to kind of like fan out and get around it. So it's going to slow down big waves of tanks like that, which is probably also good for gameplay. I heard that grenade launchers were a bit of a problem in the previous patch after all the buffs they had received. I didn't see much of it in ones, but as is often the way, blobs of them in fours were problematically strong. So Relic have tweaked the numbers here. So now when they're shooting at units inside garrisons, instead of getting a 100% damage bonus, they'll only get a 50% damage bonus. So I had to test how long it takes to kill an engineer in the previous patch and now in the current patch. And after this bonus reduction, I didn't actually see any change in the time to kill. So maybe there's a bit of RNG involved here as to where exactly the grenades land on the unit inside the building and whatnot. But yeah, it didn't seem to affect them too much. The timed medical supplies that are available from the Dingo or the 250 will now be functional while those vehicles are moving. So that is a really big deal. It's going to make it so much easier, especially as DAC, to get healing in, because you often have like 2 or 3 250s rolling around the map at certain stages, but having to stop, wait somewhere to heal up can be a bit of a chore. But now you're going to be able to heal so much more easily, and you're going to be able to roll around the map. It's going to stay with the theme of DAC's high mobility and aggression. And yeah, just good for you on the Dingo as well. Don't see quite as many of them as 250s, but still going to be packed full. Make it easier to run around the map while healing, similar to the Grenadier Vet 1 medical supplies. Anti-tank guns like the Pack 40, M1 6-pounder and Pack 38 have had their Vet 3 rate of fire bonus increased slightly from 30 to 35%. So minor tweak there, but there are quite a few minor veterancy improvements throughout this patch. There have been some really nice improvements made in the 2.1 patch to towing, breach, capture orders on command points, experience from doing minesweeping, and the stealth UI changes. All those are really nice improvements to the game. There are also quite a few like interesting changes, no longer having vision around capture points and being able to get inside upgraded bunkers. We'll have to see how that shakes out. And then there are some changes that I don't really like, the mortar shell, them looking like they're going at turbo speed, maybe not as desirable. But I think net, in terms of gameplay changes, quite a lot more improvements than negatives from this patch, but haven't looked at the balance yet, so we'll have to stay tuned for my future videos on that topic. Thank you to all of my Patreon backers, and if you appreciate these videos, I hope you consider joining up.